Okay. We're back. No votes taken, no decisions made. At this time, we'll have the invocation by Councilmember Brazil, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance.
This is a time that brings us together in celebration, reflection, anticipation for the new year. The holiday season is the time we come together today. Let us embrace the warmth and joy of the season, remembering the bonds of community, friendship, family that enrich our lives and strengthen our city. Thank you.
I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So when the mayor's comments tonight, I'm going to say, so far the holiday celebrations have all been successful. A little bit of wetness for the parade, but at least it wasn't ice and snow. And the menorah lighting for our Jewish friends went off great without a hitch. So looking forward to, oh, I don't forget, Santa in the park. Our Santa Claus is the best Santa Claus in the area. He takes his time with all the kids. You're there for a long time, and don't try to rush him because he'll tell you quick, this is his job, and he don't need you to tell him how to do it. But everything's worked well for all of our celebrations. We look forward to the flip-flop drop and the polar bear plunge, and hopefully it won't be too cold that day. But so thanks for all the people who's worked on those in the background, the city staffs and everybody else, and to make everything go so good, so smooth. Staff reports, we start off with Mr. Lutz, and as he makes his way to the podium, I would say congratulations, Mr. Lutz, on receiving the President's Award from the Coastal Code Enforcement Group of South Carolina. I don't know what they thought you did to get it, but congratulations. And speaking of code enforcement.
Well, tonight we just have a brief update on the next round of potential pedestrian paths Mayor and Council asked us to look at back in the summer. We've got 3 in front of you, one going from 2nd East on Hudson down to the Pirates Cove Playground area, one from 2nd West to 3rd West to the bathrooms, just a continuation of what we have now, and then one going from 9th West down to the county park on the west end. If you look through your packet, you will see the engineer's estimate on each of those. The long one on Hudson, the engineers are estimating $690,000 turnkey. Of course, it could be wide variation from that once it goes out to bid.
That's for the whole loop?
That's for Hudson from 2nd down to Pirates Cove. And if you go to, that would be on the ocean side of the streets, what they're recommending based on conflicts. We walked it with the engineers and determined that side of the street would be the least amount of potential conflicts. And next one from 2nd West down to 3rd West to the bathrooms. They're estimating $250,000, and that's a continuation of what we already have that ends at Loggerheads. We'll just be continuing that same concept right down to the bathrooms. That one's pretty low-hanging fruit. And then the last one, we have 2 options they presented for West Ashley to get from 9th West down to the county park. One side of the street or the other was not a lot of difference. Their cost estimate's about the same. We have not gone any further than the initial walkthrough and conflict look, and it's, you've got equal conflicts either way to go. So that's, we can get into more details if we decide to fund the design and engineering, then they would work out and give us a bit much higher option and probably present us a bigger list of conflicts you guys think about, what you're interested in. So, I don't think we're supposed to be voting on anything, right? That's just,
So the next step would be funding discussions during the budget talks coming up March through May of next year.
I have a question, just generally. You know, in some of these, especially the one down at West Ashley, there's landscaping in the right of way. And you see it's specifically noted in the plans. Even if we don't go through with that, you know, we've done a good job island-wide of getting landscaping out of the right of way. And we've tried to enforce it fairly across the island. When you see things like that, do you go check them out and see how egregious it is and if you need to say something to them? Or is it not until we go to construction?
typically, so far, we've been waiting for construction, because we know this is coming.
Right.
Just like Arctic Avenue, you know, we know there's gonna be encroachments out there when we do the redesign. Unless it's a hard encroachment, like, you know, somebody sticks a fence on the road, or if it's just vegetation, we're trying to wait until we make sure we know what we're doing going forward.
Gotcha.
And we try to do that island-wide, you know, if we see new stuff going in, we try and get it while it's being put in and right after it's put in.
Right, like big planters and stuff like that.
We rely on everybody out there to help report stuff like that to us. That's the eyes and ears.
Mr. Lutz?
Mhm.
So, 690, 250, and then the one that you mentioned last, for budget, will you?
560 for either side,
560.
either side. They're saying it's basically the same thing.
Got it. Yep, I'm just.
Does this
gonna
include any kind of lighting, I mean, pedestrian safety, illumination?
Lighting is not built into these. We did add a bunch of lighting when we did the LED conversion a couple of years ago. And now we're in the middle of doing a turbo lighting conversion. They're gonna pick that back up after the first of the year. So we can get some additional lighting from Dominion if we decide to pursue one of these, and then whatever gaps we have after that would be additional cost.
That's a major factor, pedestrian safety.
Looks like 1.5 to do all three projects.
We got strategic planning and budgeting coming up, fellas. Yeah. A good time to get that second, third west done.
We should have some other income, right, that has been accrued.
Well, when we identified funding streams, one of them was the rental registration fee, and then we have our other general revenues, but the rental registration fee specifically was designed to fund water main improvements, pedestrian improvements, the short-term rental staff. So that is a pot of money that we sort of, not officially in the budget, but
We'll have to look at,
philosophically
right.
dedicated towards
I
it.
believe TPPC has expressed an interest in possibly helping fund another design and engineering on one of these paths as well.
Did these numbers include design and engineering?
No, sir.
Just construction.
This is an engineer's estimate for construction. We still have to hire out and actually get it designed.
How much would you think,
And then put it
what does
out
that
for bid.
add?
Usually, lately,
that bad.
well, the last few have been 60,000-ish
Okay.
for a path.
Yeah, okay.
Any of these include boardwalks, wooden structures? or
Currently, no.
None of this, okay.
No, we don't have that kind of conflict.
Okay. This is no fix.
Any other questions? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Mr. Skell. That's a big one.
Mayor, Council, it's good to be in front of you again. Jack Skelton, I'm one of the owners of PCI Municipal Services. We provide the parking management services for y'all. And I wanted to give you an update on the scofflaw and collections activity related to unpaid parking citations. We had done a presentation back in July, and I've got some updated numbers for you. So as of present, there's about $685,000 in unpaid parking citations that have been moved over to a collection agency. We reinitiated collection agency back in August, and so far to date, we've collected $75,000 of those funds on behalf of the city. We have in the scofflaw category, and that would be people, for purpose of this conversation, that owe the city more than $150. So that would be someone that's had at least 2 right-of-way tickets that have escalated or multiple unpaid non-parking citations. And I've included a list here, your top 15, so you can get an idea of the folks that would currently fall into that category. I would say the mean is probably 4 unpaid parking tickets, with some that you can see from the screen have quite a few more than that they haven't honored up to. And these are all folks that would have received numerous letters in the mail and given ample opportunity to appeal and make payment on their citations. So this would not be a first offense issue. So what we have recommended is the adoption of an ordinance. Your neighboring city, Isle of Palms, has some very good language. Their threshold is $150 of outstanding debt in order to be considered a scofflaw or a public nuisance, which allows you to be eligible for towing or booting. And that's what we're recommending that you adopt here. I think it's a fair level. Again, these are folks that haven't been given ample opportunity to either appeal or make payment on the fines that are outstanding. So our recommendation is to utilize a self-releasing immobilization device instead of towing out of the gate. With the self-release device, this is an example of one. It weighs about 18 pounds. It is solid steel, so it's pretty durable. You'd have to do some work to get it off the vehicle, and if you try and drive it with it on, it would cause a considerable amount of damage to your vehicle. The intent is to immobilize some of the devices out there, like the barnacle, the yellow plastic device you put on the windshield. Has some problems. It doesn't work on golf courts very well. It can break the windshield. And with the windshield obstructed, you can still drive the vehicle. There's a number of cases out there where people drove away with the device blocking the view, which of course creates a liability concern for assault. So the idea is that if someone is found parked in the city in violation on a public roadway or in one of the parking lots, that they would receive a boot. While they're booted, there'd be a sticker put on their driver's side windshield, clearly identifying that they shouldn't move the vehicle, all the warnings and such. They'll have a 24/7 call center number they can call to ask questions, make payment. They can make payment online. Once they've made payment, they'll receive a release code. Simply enter 6 digits into the device, it unlocks, and we're recommending that we'll put a self-return station at the parking office, and they'd simply be able to drop it off 24/7. So the idea is to make a very inconvenient process of immobilization a little less painful, but still collect the funds that are owed to the city.
The penalty for not returning it?
So they are, once they pay on their credit card, there's an authorization, not a deposit, of $500. They're instructed that they have a set amount of time to return the device. We'd recommend no more than a day to return the device. If they don't, they'll be charged the $500 until they return the device. And we recommend a $50 per day charge for not returning the device in a timely manner. Being the nature of the city, there's no reason they shouldn't return the device immediately after removing it. It should not be an inconvenience since they could do it 24/7.
So are you automatically billing the credit card at that point, or how's that work?
If they do not return it, yeah, they would automatically be charged, and they'd have to bring it back. And hopefully, most people do. In other operations, most people, it's not an issue. There has to be a deterrent in order for them to not take it.
How about if they bring it back damaged?
They would be charged for the repair or the replacement of the device if necessary.
This is gonna sound weird because it's 18 pounds, but it's 18 pounds. Do you ever encounter where it's too heavy? Looking, you have some little people, 18 pounds is a lot to an older person, smaller person, just, is that a conflict? Does that ever come up? Because I saw you struggle a little bit to carry it in here. I mean, not struggle, but you could tell that it was heavier than you think.
I was a little bit of role playing there, but no, if there is a need for the customer to receive assistance during business hours, we'll provide that.
Right.
It's called an assisted release.
Right.
Yes,
You
ma'am.
mentioned that you work with Isle of Palms and they have this device.
No, ma'am, we don't work with them. I was referencing Isle of Palms because they have a ordinance for immobilization.
Okay. Do you have local areas that you work with this device?
We work with this device in a number of cities. Satellite Beach, Florida is probably the most comparable. Their council opted to boot on first offense, so it's a little different environment down there. But
So again, so local, South Carolina, anything that could relate to us, that pearls of wisdom?
not that I can think of. I know actually in the past, there was some immobilization with the barnacle here in your operation. But that's the closest I can give you.
Thank you.
Can we put the tags of these scofflaws in the flock system, or is that, to at least let them know they're on the island somewhere?
Yeah, I mean, you can do that. I can't give access to non-law enforcement, but yeah, we could know whether or not they come on the island for sure.
And just to give you an idea, if we had been immobilizing in the last 30 days, we would have booted 7 vehicles.
Really?
So there's a number out there. That's why we're bringing it to your attention, because there are a number of people that are not following the rules, and it needs to be fair to everybody that they should have to pay.
I have a question for the chief.
Yes, ma'am.
Could you add to any of this from your inside and sort of advise us your
I think
opinion?
it's a no-brainer. I mean, you have parking rules in place, and if you're only putting this on people that are failing to follow or respect your laws. So if you don't want people to respect them, why have them in place?
Thank you.
And it's multiple, it's not just one, like Satellite Beach, Florida. That's aggressive. You know, that's 2 of them maxed out, so they're obviously not trying to fix it. You know?
Do you have any data on how program has been able to afford them the ability to go back and get some of this money that's outstanding? You know, it seems like that 208 or whatever is just kind of sunk cost. I don't know how this addresses that to them.
Well, let me back. So there's, in general rule, when you issue a parking ticket and put it on a windshield, 50% of the people will pay within a few weeks.
Yeah.
Right? If they don't pay, they'll receive a notice in the mail, 21-day range. Another 15 to 20% of the people will pay at that time. They probably just forgot or whatever the case is. There's a second letter that goes out. That letter usually gets about 5, maybe 10%. So then that's when most cities go to collections, immobilization, towing, that sort of effort. We're actually, if you go back to August, September, and October, we've actually collected about 89% of the parking citations that we're issuing. So you actually have a very good overall collection rate. There's just this pool of folks that, by the name, just scoff at the law and are disregarding the rules.
The top 3 is over $3,000.
Yes, sir.
So once the word gets out there, they'll either pay their fine or they'll come to Folly Beach.
Or use a different car. It doesn't have the same tag number. To go to Folly Beach.
Well, I don't believe a different car with the same tag number wouldn't help them. Because
Yeah,
it's gonna
different
read-
car
it's
with
gonna
a
read the
different tag number.
A different car with a different tag number.
Right.
Any other questions? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Mr. McCabe.
Good evening, everyone. Since it's been some time since I last spoke about this issue, I wanted to briefly review the purpose for establishing a policy limiting public access to certain areas of City Hall and any of the grounds where the city conducts business. With the rise of First Amendment auditors, municipalities are facing challenges that weren't heard of decades ago. People who aggressively seek out attention to essentially thumb their nose at what they can and get away with First Amendment. As these audits are becoming more commonplace, municipalities that have defined policies in place detailing limited access areas are facing far less scrutiny and outrage from these auditors and their followers. During my first discussion with the council, Councilman Barker and Councilman Rich asked how drones and recording from these drones would relate to the interface and any policy limiting access areas. During my review, found that South Carolina doesn't have any laws detailing drones or their use or the recordings thereof. There are some policies in place with the federal level, but they specifically map out zones in which it's illegal to conduct activity. And yes, I checked, Folly Beach is not one of those zones. For example, the federal level will say it's illegal to fly a drone on a military base, or in this case, the closest one being the port. Can't fly a drone over there for obvious reasons. This policy as written, however, would cover recordings from drones. Essentially, the policy already details photographs, audio recordings, and video recordings. And that, by definition, would include the drone recordings. While I hope we don't need to refer to this policy, I know that we're better off having it in place and then not needing it and then needing it later on.
Questions, guys? Okay.
Thank you.
You did a good job.
Thank you.
Congratulations. Chief Gary, you're up next with these wonderful numbers.
So there's been some discussion lately about, the speed limit signs and working with DOT to kind of monitor and map out what our speeds are looking like throughout the island. What was sent to y'all, Aaron helped me out there, appreciate it, is one of the speed trailers we have that's mobile that we move around the island. So the spreadsheet that you have in front of you talks about the date or the timelines in which the trailer was in a location. The second category is what location that speed trailer was in, followed by the average speed that's been noted in that area, and then the number of vehicles counted in that area during that timeline. The violator stats talks about what percentage of vehicles are within certain ranges. I think the results are awesome. This is something we mentioned a couple meetings ago, that our average speeds are below the speed limit. One of the ones that I thought was just absolutely, we registered, almost 320,000 reads in the 800 block of East Ashley with an average speed of 19.68 miles an hour. And that's just what it is, right? It's a computer with a radar unit, and that's what it reads. There's no input from anybody else. There's a number of categories on here where roads had 0% at certain speed ranges. Notably, all of them had a 0% at anything over 44 mile an hour. That's huge, right? It's not to say that there was zero cars, it's just such a small number, it didn't even register a single percentage point. And again, you can see all these readings here are in the tens of thousands of reads. So, as a result of some of this, we stopped somewhere around 2,200 traffic stops this year. We're doing the work, the speeds are good. I put these percentages up against any city around here. So that was just kind of the explanation, to see if you guys had any questions and kind of go over that. And obviously, I think it's good that there's been some talk about putting up some more of these signs. I think it's a great thing, and it raises awareness, shows that we are paying attention. And I think that's kind of the overall goal, to increase pedestrian traffic safety, like you mentioned earlier, so I think it's good.
That traffic count is unbelievable.
Yep.
319,000 in 36 days.
And most of these were during kind of that end of summer time frame, getting into fall, so.
Yeah, from
Yeah.
August the 13th to September the 8th, 319,537, and the average speed was below. It was
Yeah.
19.6. You guys are doing a great job. I would be thrilled if I was working that
Yeah.
piece. This is
Fantastic.
That just goes to prove one of the reasons South Carolina was having a struggle with the safety project here was because of numbers like that.
You can see how many traffic stops are being done. The activation of the blue lights slows people down even more than radar trailers. And there's not.
And don't get me wrong, that 2,200 number is low. There's 2 months because remember the whole CAD situation where we had to switch CAD systems, I lost 2 months of data. So that 2,200 number is even without those 2 months of data that were, May and June, which were busy months. So, even if you take a rolling 12-month average, that's another 370 stops.
Well, as you know, safety and security is always high on the list, and
Yes,
what
ma'am.
this validates is that we're doing a great job
Yes, ma'am.
in this area, and also perception now can become reality.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
And just, a heads up, I mentioned this in the staff meeting earlier, I think it's important for y'all to know, the Low Country LEN, the Law Enforcement Network, we're gonna do a press conference tomorrow at our boat landing, talking about, driving sober and driving safe over the holidays. That's gonna happen tomorrow around 2:00, just to kind of go over, and it's not just Folly Beach's efforts, it's the whole Low Country efforts, to keep people safe over the holidays while they're visiting family and whatnot, so.
How did we
that'll
get
happen.
involved in that?
It's something we've done for years. It's just kind of a way to share information, work together, and see what trends are happening, and just,
All right, thank you, sir.
thank you.
Moving on to the approval of the agenda, to have a motion to approve.
So moved.
Have a second?
Second.
Any objections?
Can we, you wanna do it now?
Without objection, approved. Approval of the minutes from November the 28th. Have a motion for approval.
So moved.
Have a second?
Second.
Any additions or corrections? I'll take that without objection. Just a written. Personal appearances, we'll start off with Ms. Benjamin, Race for Life.
Good evening, everyone. Again, my name is Chassie Benjamin. I'm a part of the community outreach program at We Are Sharing Hope SC. It is the organ and tissue recovery for the state of South Carolina. This will be our 19th annual Race for Life here on Folly Beach. Of course, we come to get your approval for it. It's where we have our donor family heroes and also our recipients come together, and of course, Race for Life. So, yes. And I have my Race for Life committee member and also our race director, Chuck.
Motion to approve.
So moved.
Do you have any questions or? Yes, y'all work with Chief Puritan, y'all got that already done?
Yep.
Great, thanks. All right, Mr. Pope.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Bazell?
Yes.
Mr. Ricks?
Yes.
Dr. Hooten?
Yes.
Mr. Williams?
Yes.
Mr. Farley?
Yes.
Mr. Ellis?
Yes.
Mayor Goodwin?
No, not just kidding. Ms. Travers, you're up.
So I am here to seek final approval on some of our winter events that we have coming up. So we, of course, already did the safety meeting with Lieutenant Upton and other appropriate members of the city. But essentially, we have the fireworks on New Year's Eve, slated to go off at 7 p.m. Due to high tides at 11:06 p.m. So we're looking to do a family-friendly event this year. In lieu of that, I also talked to Lieutenant Upton about, we'll have a security team, of course, on the beach, keeping everyone safe and setting up a perimeter, but then we're going to move those people after cleanup time onto Center Street to help manage the flip-flop drop. So that is our plan for New Year's Eve. New Year's Day is the polar plunge. Again, high tide hitting us at a bad time at 11:30 a.m. So we've moved the costume contest to 12:30 p.m. and the plunge to 1:30. We'll have a security team out there that day as well to help manage that. And of course, the tides will also be actively helping us that day. And then, of course, our larger scale event is Taste of Folly on January 20th. We bounced it a week this year due to feedback from the city. It was just a lot too close to the holidays, so we moved it a week. So very typical as it has been in years past. We will do the cocktail competition on Friday night on private property at the Tides. And then Saturday will be a street closure, 10 to 4, typical vendors, live music, a kids area, those types of things for fun. And then I think the plan is to wait on Sea and Sand approval until January. So that's kind of where we sit. I'm not sure if anybody has any questions about any of those events.
I do have one.
Yeah.
We're gonna have a motion for approval?
Motion for approval.
Have a
Second.
Now you can ask your question.
Okay. I know you've had some discussions about a laser light show
Yes.
instead of fireworks. is that conversation continuing for, not this year necessarily, but for next year?
Yes, that conversation is continuing. We were obligated, in a sense, to do an actual fireworks display since we had to cancel the 4th pretty close to the date, so we're just carrying those funds
Okay.
to do it on New Year's. But yes, that is a discussion underway, either for the 4th or New Year's
Okay.
next year.
Thank you.
So, yeah.
I think the 7 o'clock time is pretty cool, because if you do want children to come, those that can accommodate the loud noise, they can come at 7, and there's not the draw where you want to see the flip-flop drop, but you also want to see the fireworks, so you're either rushing from one to the other, or or having to pick one or the other. So I like the 7 o'clock.
Yeah.
Before your bedtime, too.
Absolutely.
We're excited to see how it works out. You know, we're hoping maybe some people dine on the island and bring business in. So, you know, hopefully it'll be good for the community.
Great.
So that's our hope. Yeah.
Kelly, for the Taste of Folly, have you decided on an admissions fee? I didn't see that in here.
We were gonna keep it the same, so it's $10 in advance and then $15 at the door. We didn't plan on raising it. We've had some good luck with sponsorships this year, so we're hoping that we can offset the cost with some sponsors.
Thank you.
So,
Free to residents.
free to residents, yes, and children under 12.
Any other? Mr. Poe. This will be for all, the total package.
Mr. Farley?
Yes.
Mr. Grooms?
Yes.
Mr. Ellis?
Yes.
Dr. Houghton?
Yes.
Mr. Gazelle?
Yes.
Mr. Rich?
Not gonna vote.
Mayor Goodwin?
Yes.
Passes.
Dr. Dover. You're next.
Great. Hi, guys. My name is Tess Steffinger, and I'm an assistant professor at the University of Alabama.
Oh,
And
you've got to quit right now.
Roll Tide.
If you'd have said Auburn, you'd have been in business.
come on. But yeah, I don't know if you guys know, but I've been here for about a year and a half doing a study on Folly, looking at historical adaptation pathways. And yeah, I just wanted to present some of the results to you guys today. I talked to Aaron through some of them a few weeks ago, and I've now moved on to a case study on Kiowa, so I thought it was a good time to wrap some of this up. But yeah, so just kind of a background on the study. So a lot of the times when we go to make decisions, they are kind of influenced by past decisions, right? So if we chose a strategy about 20 years ago, it can constrain some of the options available to us today. I kind of find that fascinating, so I was just interested in understanding how past decisions around coastal risk have been made and kind of taking that information and then helping us make better decisions in the future. So that's kind of the background of the study, and really the goal for me as a researcher was to come up with a method that could be replicated by others, and then also if any useful information came out of the study to pass that on to the city of Folly. And yeah, so just an overview of the study. While I was here, I interviewed 19 people, mainly local and state officials. I asked questions around current and future risk perception, so kind of what they thought the biggest risk to the community was, and was it coastal risk, was it something else? And then also asking questions around how different coastal risk management strategies have been decided upon. So for example, the beach nourishment process, kind of how that came to be. And kind of the results that came out of this were this crazy historic pathway like timeline that you guys have in front of you, and now everyone's gonna get to see, and it's super embarrassing. But anyway, I came up with this timeline, and I have also submitted 2 papers to academic journals. And if those do get published, I'll forward those to the city, obviously. So hopefully, fingers crossed. But yeah, so these timelines, they're pretty crazy, but I just wanted to hone in on a couple of things today to focus on. So on this first one, this is kind of showing a pathway of beach nourishment. So really looking back to the late 1800s when the jetties were first installed and how that led to erosion on Folly. And then in the late 1970s, there wasn't a lot of beach left, and there was a lot of activity on Folly. The erosion committee was formed, and a lot of initiatives through the city trying to find ways to kind of mitigate that risk. And they ended up partnering or working with the Army Corps of Engineers through a Section 111 study to get the funding and the current cost share you guys have now in the agreement. So that kind of came to pass and has led to the current process of beach nourishment on the island. So that's kind of what I mean when I say a decision pathway, so kind of thinking of that initial trigger of the jetties being installed, leading to the erosion, some decisions that were made and policies in the 1980s, and then the current strategy of beach nourishment being used today. And then on the next slide, this one was kind of interesting. So, there was kind of a lot of planning going on, recently, thinking of how the sea level rise adaptation plan led to the marsh management plan and then to the drainage plan. And going through some of those interviews, multiple people really talked about how that 1 in 1,000 year flood event in 2015 kind of sparked that interest, not just in the state, but in Folly, of looking at flood mitigation. So just kind of seeing here how a storm event can lead to kind of these planning initiatives. So that kind of shows an example there. And then this last slide on the timeline, this is a little different. When I came down here to work on Folly, I was really just interested on the beachfront, what was going on there. But in multiple interviews, a lot of people talked about development on the island. And I just wanted to highlight that one of the big, kind of things going on in the 1980s was the height limit and also some zoning restrictions that were put in place in the 80s. And so that was interesting, kind of that limit on development there. And then thinking of how that kind of factors into some of the decisions around short-term rentals going on now. It just seems like some of this limitation on development and thinking about the character of the city, it seems to kind of keep coming back through time, maybe in different ways. So I thought that was interesting. And then, just a couple of the main takeaways from the study. I just wanted to kind of highlight two today. I know I listed a few here. But really, getting that process of renourishment settled in the 80s and, that first renourishment in the 90s, I think that freed up a lot of resources, both time and financially, for the city to kind of address some of these other risks within the community, whether that be issues on the marsh side or drainage issues. And also, I think the one that I found most interesting was really we think kind of about risk as a function of hazard, exposure, and vulnerability. And a lot of that time we think of really the hazard. So when we think of Folly, trying to think if it's going to be a Category 3 or Category 5 storm coming through, kind of think of that hazard. But in terms of Folly, I found one of the most interesting things was in terms of the actual exposure. So, some of these limits on development that have occurred, through the years have really lowered the exposure of the island. So it's kind of, changed the risk profile of the island in a way. So I found that interesting. And that was a short summary of the study. Any questions?
Thank you.
I think it's interesting how busy we've gotten in the last
I know.
10 years, because like we were asleep from 1990 to 2010.
Well, I couldn't fit everything on there either, but there's lots of other things. I have a very long Excel sheet that I will send you, Aaron, at some point. So.
And Mary, do you mind, and kind of building on what Mr. Farley said, all of us have been involved in these planning decisions or lived through it as residents, but the city was before us, the city will be after us, and this is really, I think, the first time it's all been put together in a place. We all know anecdotally what I heard from the last city administrator, who heard it from the last city administrators, et cetera. But this really lets us go back in time and tie, specific needs that came up or specific events that triggered reaction, and how the answer to that reaction allowed us to kind of build up levels of proactive planning over time. And it puts it all together and say, this is why we do this today. And this is what started us down the path that got us to this today. And I think it's super exciting for me.
The history of society ought to love your chart.
Yeah,
For sure.
Could you expand a little more about linear versus circular?
Yeah, so I think this is more kind of in the academic literature. When we think of decision pathways, we're thinking of like sequencing decisions through time. And a lot of the time we just think of that linearly. But looking kind of at the process of nourishment on Folly, it's actually a cyclical process, right? Every 10 years the beach is nourished. So I think some of these decisions, it's not just in a linear way. We can start thinking of those in a cycle. And I mean, it's important in a way for the decision-making side, because if we think of it as a cycle, we can start thinking of where in that cycle can we intervene to kind of put us more on a more sustainable path, I guess.
So you've learned from the history, we're in the present, this can project the future in that cycle.
I mean, especially like in this, like the cycles, yes. And I think the development one is interesting because you know, some of these issues keep coming back, but in a different form.
Mhm.
So I don't really know how well you could predict what would happen next, but just be aware that, you know, these issues will probably surface again.
And do you stay local for a while, or what is,
Yeah, so I've been living over on James Island for quite a while, and I will be here through the new year, but I'm going out to teach a class in Alabama in the spring, so I'll be gone for 4 months, but back in May, so,
okay?
yeah.
Because one of the things that strikes me is what you're educating us about, other people could benefit. Potential
Yeah.
clubs could sponsor you to lecture and things of that nature, so.
Yeah, definitely. I would be more than willing to, you know, reach out or talk to any of you guys more, and Erin, maybe you have some ideas you could pass along too, so,
Thank you.
yeah, thank you.
Congratulations on your degree.
Thank you, yeah,
Yeah.
appreciate it. All right, thanks, guys. Have a good night.
Any citizen comments? No boards or commissions? So we're moving to old business, franchise, commercial activity contracts.
I make a motion, we postpone the franchise commercial activity contracts until the January meeting, for a resolution on, bid minimums.
Second.
Bids are all over the board, we just need to kind of put some parameters on them. And it's something we've needed to do for a couple of years, we just kind of keep kicking the can. So that we'll take care of it this year.
The old proverbial can.
Yeah, the can's beat up.
All right, any other comments, questions? Mr. Poe?
Mr. Crooms?
Yes.
Mr. Gazelle?
Yes.
Dr. Houghton?
Yes.
Mr. Ellis?
No.
Mr. Farley?
Yes.
Mr. Rich?
Yes?
Mayor Goodwin?
Yes.
You say no, you're second?
Postponed.
Okay, zip right on into new business, ordinance 21-23, ordinance amending the Folly Beach Code of Ordinances, section 13202, city officers and employees, interference, resisting arrest by codifying procedures related to the First Amendment audits in public facilities. This is the first reading. I have a motion for approval.
So moved.
Have a second?
Second.
Any discussion, questions, comments?
The one question on page 49, where it says, "The notice of exclusion shall be in writing given to the person excluded, signed by the city official." I'm wondering, is that wording developed, or is there a form that our employees will use to put somebody under notice of having to be out of the building for 24 hours? It's in 5.
We'll have to make the notice.
Okay.
I didn't know Sean had a copy of one. Do you have a copy of one that was used? He does. Look at it.
This is just the policy regarding public access to video and audio recording of municipal property.
Just a boilerplate,
Just the boilerplate.
yeah.
But do people know how to, it says it's supposed to be in writing. Does everybody know what they're supposed to write when they give somebody a notice of exclusion?
We'll develop a standard notice of exclusion, it's
By
basically
the
like a
time
no,
this gets-
basically like a no trespass notice, here.
Right.
Here's your Miranda card.
Well, I'd like to make sure that's developed before this is enacted.
Yes, sir.
Any other comments? Mr. Poe?
Dr. Houghton?
Yes.
Mr. Grooms?
Yes.
Mr. Gazelle?
Yes.
Mr. Ellis?
Yes.
Mr. Rich?
Yes.
Mr. Farley?
Yes.
Mayor Goodwin?
Yes.
Passes. First reading.
Ordinance 22-23, ordinance amending Folly Beach Code of Ordinances, section 115, vehicle immobilization service by establishing conditions of the immobilization of vehicles on public property. First reading. Do I have a motion for approval?
So moved.
Have a second? Second. Any comments, questions?
Yeah, I have a question. And it's not so much with the red areas, but it's more the stuff that was in there. We're allowing immobilization on public property, and we're allowing it at higher rates. But in here, it says for private commercial property, the maximum is $75 allowed to immobilize a car. I think that's an outdated number, and if we're gonna get this code up to date, I think that needs to be higher, for one. And two, I don't notice anything in here about private property that's not zoned commercial. Because if somebody somebody parks blindly in your yard, do you have any recourse to tow them or anything like that? And I've heard that from people before.
Yeah, you do. If they're in your yard, you can call tow truck.
But it's just not spelled out here. I don't know if we need to spell that out in this section or if it's somewhere else. The commercial one got me just because the number's low, but I didn't see anything about private property that's not commercial in here. And I know because we were actually just talking about this earlier, I've had people park in the middle, of our yard, just, people do weird stuff. But it's, if they're parked on your septic tank, they got a goat.
And I think that's because this ordinance was developed specifically for the commercial parking lots that we're towing people.
Okay.
So we can definitely go and look to clarify that it expands to other ones. But I believe the reason why this keeps referring to commercially zoned property is because it was originally written for the private parking lots.
I gotcha. So if we're doing that, then I would like to make a motion to raise the maximum price for a lease of a vehicle from 75 to 125. At least get it up to today's standards. If we can do it as a city, they should be able to do it as a commercial parking lot as well.
Yeah, I don't care.
I mean, it's just trying to get them in line with each other.
So you got a motion, do I have a second?
Second.
All right, any discussion on that? You got it, it's on page 52. Yeah.
So on the motion to
On the motion.
change the maximum charge for towing from private commercial property from $75 to $125. Mr. Ellis?
Yes.
Mr. Grooms?
Yes.
Mr. Rich?
Yes.
Mr. Brazil? Yes. Dr. Houghton?
Yes.
Mr. Farley?
Yes.
Mayor Goodwin?
Yeah.
The motion passes.
Back to the original motion, now as amended. Any other questions or comments? Mr. Pope? No, thank you, sorry,
So, as amended.
as amended.
Mr. Rich?
Yes.
Mr. Brazil?
Yes.
Dr. Houghton?
Yes.
Mr. Ellis?
Yes.
Mr. Farley?
Yes.
Mr. Grooms? Mayor Goodwin?
Yes.
Passes first.
Resolution 55-23, a resolution awarding $1,000 to James Island Charter High School Band to facilitate music education growth and experience and it's recommended by the Community Promotions Committee. Have a motion for approval? Have a second?
Second.
Any questions or comments?
I'd like to add the balance of my council discretionary funds to it. The balance of my council discretionary
You gotta know how much
funds.
that is.
I'd like to add to this.
Lee, am I correct saying that we don't need a resolution from Mr. Ellis to do that? He can just freely spend
Yeah,
his own?
he can just do it.
I'll tell you why. My mom was a high school choir teacher the whole time I was growing up, and got to see how music can take a kid on a total different pathway that's positive and good. And I think it's really important to promote music in schools.
Well, you can get with Lee and send him a check. Back to Resolution 55-23. Any other comments? Mr. Pope?
Mr. Farley?
Yes.
Mr. Ellis?
Yes.
Mr. Brazil?
Yes.
Mr. Rich?
Yes.
Dr. Houghton?
Yes.
Mr. Grooms?
Yes.
Mayor Goodwin?
Yes.
Passes.
So for Councilman Farley, right now, we're gonna slow things down about 30 minutes.
No, not for me.
Resolution 56-23, a resolution by the Folly Beach City Council authorizing the use of $65,000 from the Capital Acquisition Reserve for a living shoreline stabilization demonstration. Have a motion to approve?
So
Have a second?
Sorry.
Any comments or questions? Ms. Stevens, do you have a presentation for this? I was just kidding,
I've spoken twice, I can speak again.
No.
I'll answer
All right.
questions.
Mr. Pope?
Dr. Houghton?
Yes.
Mr. Brazil?
Yes.
Mr. Ellis?
Yes.
Mr. Farley?
Yes.
Mr. Rich?
yes.
Mr. Grooms?
Yes.
Mayor Goodwin?
Yes.
Passes.
Mr. Grooms, would you like to start the council comments?
Certainly. Eric Lutz, thank you again, or congratulations on your President's Award, a high honor. And I guess go off what Chief Gilreath was saying, please be safe, no DUI, drinking during the holidays, it's important. And I'd like to wish each and every one of you a Merry Christmas and Happy New Year.
And well, I'd like to wish everybody a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, and welcome Mr. Bazell to City Council, and like to thank the staff for all their hard work all year. And we get up here and do our thing, but it's the staff that's really the backbone behind what happens with the city. So I'm very appreciative of that. And so that's all I got to say.
Happy holidays. I get to go before Chris, so I get to tell everybody 9 to 3 is the blood drive on Thursday.
I forgot about that. I started the other end, right?
It's at the Tides, 9 to 3, and we're going for 100 pints. That's like a record for us, and it's what MUSC uses in a day. So it's important. Anybody that can give, show up, see you at the Tides.
Just like to remind everyone, we have a party tomorrow night at Crab Shack from 5 to 7 to celebrate Folly. And a thank you for allowing me to serve you again. And I am going to hold off on the joy and cheer because we meet again next week on December 19th at 10 a.m. So I'll wish everyone happy holidays then.
I just want to thank everybody that came out and made the parade such a success this past weekend. That was it was great. I appreciate everybody's tolerance of me being my debut as a judge of the float. So I appreciate that. And yeah, everybody have a safe holiday if you're not here next week.
Happy holidays. Thank you very much.
Have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
President, 801.
You went too far.
Thank you for your comments.